Good morning, everyone. Let's start. I know we are a minute early. I'd like to check sound and the chat function. So if you can hear me, if you can see me, if you can see the presentation, type in the chat where you are currently sitting. Let's see if that works. Okay. We have one person from France, Poland, Vienna. Where's the rest sitting? Let's see if you can hear and see me. Okay, Warsaw, Poland, Hungary, fantastic. I'm personally currently sitting in Lisbon, Portugal. All seems to be working fine. So let's get started punctually. Welcome to the first module of our job search support, how to set a realistic goal and how to position yourself. For those who do not know me, my name is Sandra Bichl. I am originally from Austria, and almost exactly 10 years ago, I founded Career Angels. From 2002 until 2007, I had two career paths. On the one hand, I was an executive search consultant while being based in Budapest, Hungary, and Warsaw, Poland. And I was also in marketing and sales while being based in Mexico and Ecuador. So quite diverse. While working as an executive search consultant, I realized I much more preferred working with candidates than with the actual corporations. And it was only natural for me to pick the candidate side and found Career Angels in 2010. In the last years, more than 5,000 people mainly across Europe, I'd say 95% Europe, 5% outside of Europe, have taken advantage of our advice and support when it comes to career management and job search support. I started lecturing in 2014 at renowned business schools in Milan, Vienna, Brussels, Mannheim, also in Warsaw. In 2017, I became certified by Decision Dynamics in the tools Career View and Culture View. But what is much more important than that is how the company works and what we base our methodology and advice on. Thanks to how we work, meaning knowing and helping our clients, the candidates in the job market, maneuver the job search process, we have been collecting, and this is for the last almost 5 years, we collect data on how over 5,000 recruiters have reacted and react to job applications. And we also have done that for almost 20,000 decision makers. So in the last years, we have tracked and analyzed what do executive search consultants and recruiters react to, what CVs do they react to, what cover emails do they react to, and the same with the decision makers. So when we share advice, it is not based on our let's say, professional opinion, but it is the sum of 25,000 people. To be sure it's objective and to be sure that we recognize where the trends come from and what works and what doesn't work. Our team, our Career Angels team, is currently over 20 people across Europe. And all of us are ex-recruiters. We have worked in HR, talent management, coaches, etc. About today, please do take notes. The presentation will not be made available. I want to make this as interactive as possible. So there will be questions, there will be short exercises. So if you can, please have your chat ready, and if you can, please type or do this. And if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat. If you are joining live, you can ask questions in the comment section. My second presenter has an eye on Facebook, so any questions or comments will be then transferred into the Click Meeting chat here. About the coronavirus and the job market. From basically one day to another, overnight, the employee market or the candidate market has become an employer market. And I hope it's okay for you if I get right to it. The moment I just have a message that the Facebook broadcast isn't working. The moment we realized that the coronavirus is not a temporary stay at home for a couple of days kind of thing, we immediately prepared a job search and career management guide for coronavirus times. We were probably the first company to prepare and release it, and so far we are still the only career services and outplacement company that offers part of the services for free. I have checked even today in the morning if that has changed. I looked at the biggest two providers. We're the only ones who feel even the human need to support as many people as possible. So if you want to support this, we're doing crowdfunding via PayPal. Now, coronavirus immediate effects. I said employer versus employee market. Let's look at the data, and that data is fresh from yesterday. In week 13, we started tracking numbers for 18 countries. These are our 18 most important markets from our clients' perspective. And here we track, so that you know what those numbers mean, we track the number of published job ads on LinkedIn. Now, is this a perfect KPI to track? Definitely not. Because, for example, in Austria, between week 13 and week 16, 7,500 job ads disappeared from LinkedIn. Does that mean that 7,500 jobs have completely disappeared? No. It means that part of those jobs have most probably changed to a more cost-effective local solution, and some of the jobs have been put, some of those recruitment processes have been put on hold. Doesn't mean that they have completely disappeared. Although it's not perfect, it is still a very good signal of what is currently happening. Now you can see that between week 13 and week 16, at the very bottom, minus 594,866. What is that? That is almost 600,000 job ads that have disappeared from LinkedIn within only 3 weeks. That is in percent minus 15, almost minus 15%. If you want to have a look at it in a sorted manner, you can see that here. Ukraine is still hiring, and then we have it sorted from Belgium at minus 5.72% down to Estonia, where we have minus 33%. I'll give you a moment if you want to look for your own countries. We started tracking that once we saw that this is not a temporary in terms of 1 week kind of thing, but a temporarily permanent state of economy that we need to stay at home and work from home. So last week we extended our 18 countries to 36 countries in Europe. And here we have a week-to-week view from last week to this week, and let me sort that. So in 36 countries, across 36 countries, 278,223 job ads have disappeared from LinkedIn. This is minus 5.89%. I'll also show you the sorted version in case you want to find your own countries. So Slovenia has increased 15% from week to week. Denmark has another 800 job ads, plus 6.69%, etc. But then when you look at Sweden, -5%, Norway, -8%, Poland, -8.91%, Hungary, -12%, Spain, -19.85%. So that gives us quite an indication of a market trend. Now, how does the job search strategy look like, especially if you have already been made redundant, or if you fear that on April 30th, your current employer says, listen, we need to cut costs. One question from the chat, can you add the United States? Let's see. Can't promise that. So the job search strategy, we have 4 steps. The first step is to define the goal as precise and realistic as possible, to choose, especially now, the path of the least resistance. Why? Because recruiters when recruiting, want to compare oranges to oranges and apples to apples, and not apples and oranges. Let me explain. Now that we have, again, an employer market, companies can be very precise and very picky to actually handpick the best possible candidate. Why is that so important? Especially in periods of crisis, companies choose candidates that seem to pose the least risk when hiring them. Least risk means immediate performance, keep the recruitment costs down, no recruitment mistakes. So they're looking for the perfect match for candidates who can hit the ground running, or as those candidates are called, plug and play candidates. So even if you believe that you could do a certain job, but it's not obvious to the recruiter, you will be perceived as an apple who is trying to get an orange job. I hope that makes sense. So here the goal is, and this is what we're talking about today, if you are an apple and for some reason you want or have to get an orange kind of job, you need to show that in your materials. And that gets me to the second point, to the second step in the job search process, which is your unique selling proposition. In other words, how you brand and position yourself. Again, overnight, you will not be competing against the usually 200 to 1,000 co-candidates, but 3 or even 5,000. Third step, prepare 2 CVs and have an optimized LinkedIn profile. And the fourth step would be to use all channels and not only one of them. All channels, all 4 channels. By that I mean speculative introduction, networking, executive search firms, and job ads. A little comment here. What does that mean and where do those numbers come from? As I said, we track numbers and we base our recommendations based on the numbers and trends that we are able to identify. So what we do each year, whenever one of our clients accepts a job offer, we track which of those 4 channels has generated the job offer they have accepted. So we do not track all of the job offers, but the one they accepted, which implies that it's the best possible job offer they received. So speculative introduction means reaching out, making a list of companies, which is usually between 60 and 90, and reaching out to your potential boss directly. Looking at 2017 to 2019, here the average efficiency of that channel was 45.67%. Now, some of you might think, okay, but what if I'm a CEO? Where would I then apply to, or who would I contact? And here the same mechanics apply. If you're a CEO, you reach out to your potential boss, meaning to the CEO at headquarter level, regional or global headquarter. And that's also one of the ways how this works. Then we have networking. So getting a job by being recommended through your network. And here you can see from 2017 to 2019, the average efficiency of that channel is 29%. Executive search firms in the last 3 years, 23, 14, and 8%, on average 15%. You can here see a downward trend. And with networking, it has been a stark upward. And for networking, this is a record year for 2019. And when we look at job ads from 2017 to 2019, it's 10.33%, including board and board -1 level. And here, more than half of the job ads were published on LinkedIn. When it comes to 2020, I know the question hasn't been asked yet, but I assume you're interested in getting a feel for what we think 2020, where it might go. I do believe that for 2020, speculative introduction, networking, and job ads will increase, and executive search firms will decrease. Even maybe an increase in job ads, given how the job markets or companies are now using technology. Technology is cheaper than having a team of 10 recruiters. So I can very much see more companies switching to applicant tracking systems. And I also foresee that the top executive search firms will lose business. And some of the projects either they will try to handle them through, again, their own network, or might go to cheaper local but high quality service providers. A question from Elina. Which way of reaching out, introduction, would you recommend? LinkedIn, email, personal meeting at a fair conference? What works best? Well, I would probably exclude personal meeting, but I know given current times. But I understand it's a big picture question. Looking at the data, what works best is reaching out by email. When reaching out by email, you can expect a response rate of 30 to 50% under the assumption that you have picked out the right companies, the right decision makers, the CV fits, the cover email fits, the subject line fits, so that somebody doesn't want to just click delete when receiving your email. So what has proven most effective is reaching out by email. Okay. Now that I've given you the rundown, let's put that also into perspective of what it is that we are offering across the 4 modules. Today, we will look at how to define a goal and how to work on your own branding and positioning. Module 2, so next week, Tuesday, will be about preparing the 2 types of CVs and how to optimize your LinkedIn profile for active job search. By 2 CVs, I'll be more precise here. I mean the CV for the human being, the recruiter, and the second CV for applicant tracking systems. And those 2 CVs have almost nothing in common, also from a preparation point of view. And using all 4 channels, we will discuss that in the 3rd module. And the 4th module will be dedicated to online interviews, which we will do in very much detail, as the recruiters that we have spoken to, especially executive search, let's put it bluntly, they complain about how today's candidates are not prepared for online interviewing, going as far as actually failing in their last round interviews, especially if the first couple of rounds had been in person. And then they simply don't know how to excel or perform as well as in person online. So we'll talk about that in a lot of detail during our 4th module. Then we will have a week break, and then we'll start from scratch, and we'll do module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4 again, for all those who have received the news will have received the news by the end of April. Good. First things first, realistic goal setting. And here we will look at 3 different levels. And this is super important to pay attention because one, of course, it's useful for you to know, but also because we will soon have a little exercise based on that. So what is realistic goal setting? How do we differentiate standard, medium, and from difficult? So a standard job search process is one when you look for a job in line with your experience, competences, and interests. Medium job search, you're looking for a job in line with your competences outside your key industry. And difficult would be you're looking for a job that is outside your core industry and experience. It is definitely possible, but it requires planning. Now, translating that into a timeline, a standard job search process for experienced managers and executives would take in the past 3 to 4 months. For specialists, less. Currently, this might take up to 6 months. A medium complexity in the past would take 4 to 6 months. Now we estimate it to be around 9 months. And difficult still remains difficult, 12 to 24 months. So if you're not financially prepared, choose the path of the least resistance and choose the option that is easiest and shortest. Now, I want to make sure we are all on the same page and we all understand standard, medium, and difficult the same way. So let's assume there is a candidate who is an architect, studies executive, is currently studying an executive MBA, has been an architect for 5 years, is working as an architect, architect meaning not IT, but the more traditional architect kind. And that person says, I would like to be a startup consultant. My new job should be startup consultant. Question to you, is this a standard, medium, or difficult job search complexity? Okay, I can already see first reactions. The first 2 are difficult. I see medium. Okay, let's see. I agree with the ones who were courageous enough to chat. Without more information, it's between medium and difficult. In current times, closer to difficult. Second example, somebody with a business degree has been working for 20 years, out of which 15 years in a corporation. So, and then after 5 years in a corporation, they moved up to a board level and they have been 5 years self-employed. So the current situation is self-employed since 2015. Their goal, and this is something that is already happening to a lot of small business owners and freelancers, where their client source has dried up and they say, I can't run my company again, I need to find a job. Question to all of you, is this standard, medium, or difficult? What would you say? Okay, standard, standard, difficult, standard. With a tendency to standard, I'd say, if I see that correctly. Okay. From our perspective, and this is irrespectively of the coronavirus, anybody who wants, I mean, this is somebody who for 15 years was in corporations and the last 10 years at a board level. So when they exited the corporate world, they were a CEO, a CFO, a C something. And then they decided to start with a company. That would have been 2015. And 2020, they say, didn't really work out. My business model wasn't prepared for a crisis. I need to go back. Anybody who exits the corporate world and wants to go back, this is going to be difficult. The corporate world and the executive search community prefer candidates who have been at a board level and who are active members of the job market. Now, I say difficult here, the way we've defined that. What if we reframe that same person and that same profile and say, well, self-employed is fine, but what does that mean, 5 years of self-employment? Let's say that for the last 5 years, this person has been doing a successful project-based advisory to management boards at corporations. And actually what they want to do is find a job as an advisor or external consultant. If we reframe it that way, what would you now say? Is it a standard, medium, or difficult job search? It's doable. I like that. Who said that? Richard. And by reframing it, the job search becomes medium. It will still be difficult to get into a permanent employer-employee relationship, but it isn't difficult anymore. It's doable. I like Richard's definition, doable. So in other words, what you are seeing here, we are turning apples into semi-oranges. Now let's look at this example. This person has an MA in psychology, has been working for 7 years across, let's say, 2 HR departments, is currently an HR business partner, and wants to find a job as an HR business partner or HR manager. What would you say, standard, medium, or difficult? Standard, 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 exactly. So this would be standard. So this is really something looking for a job. This is the path of the least resistance. If that person said, listen, I want to find a job as an HR director, I'm ready for the next step, then I'd say medium to difficult, especially now. And the last example, somebody with a degree in marketing, 11 years with marketing departments, current role marketing manager, goal, I want to be a marketing manager. Would that be a standard, medium, or difficult job search process? Diana, why do you say medium? I'm interested. Let's see if Diana manages to chat and share her answer. The thing is, I agree with Diana. It will be medium to difficult. Well, that person still would be a marketing manager. Now, why this is difficult? Because especially marketing professionals fall into the category of a lot of co-competitors. So there are, I mean, marketing is, in the perspective of most companies, a cost center. So who gets fired and let go first? Costs, marketing among others. Unless I rephrase it and can say, this is a marketing manager who has experience and focuses on e-commerce, digitalization, and social media. And then by reframing it, it becomes a standard to medium job search process. Why? It's still not completely standard because marketing, HR have usually a lot of competitors on the job market unless they can, again, show that they are different, better, they have a unique selling proposition for their potential employers. So let's summarize that. Difficult. If you want to change industries, especially if you're coming from or going to a hermetic industry. So there are industries who are not that open to our external candidates as, for example, the pharma industry. If you want to be promoted, let's say from an HRBP to a director level, from manager to a board level. If you want to change countries without prior experience or the necessary language skills. So let's say there are markets that are very local language oriented. Germany, Austria, France. And there are countries that are not that open to foreign candidates. Medium would be when we have high competition. And standard would be plug and play candidates that I've already mentioned. So you're an apple for an apple position and an orange for orange positions. And standard would be if you have skills that are relevant for 2020. What skills are those? Digitalization, restructuring, change management, optimization, either cost or processes, leadership skills, anything that is analytical, IT tools, etc. So again, how you position yourself and what you're able to prove is key here. The biggest mistake in positioning would be to say, well, because times are tough, I can do anything. I just want to work. I understand where you're coming from, but the job market will not understand that. The job market, especially recruiters, internal and external ones, need to know what box to put you into. From a recruiter's perspective, let's say the average recruiter would receive before Corona, the other day I heard it's BC now, before Corona, they would receive on average 50 unsolicited CVs per day. Unsolicited CV means I have not requested the CV. 50 CVs per day is 250 CVs per week, is 1,000 CVs per month, is 12,000 CVs for one human being, the poor recruiter, which is humanly not possible to read. Of course, everyone wants to be seen as a candidate with potential and wishes and dreams and competencies, and everybody wishes for a recruiter to actually read the CV, give them a call, understand what it is, where you are going, but it's humanly not possible. On the screen in the recruitment process, you're reduced to a piece of paper, to a screen. And if there are too many question marks at first sight to say, well, self-employed since 2015, but what was the self-employment? What are the projects? And I have lined up 200 candidates where I have everything ready. I'd go for the easy candidates, especially now that I can cherry pick the perfect candidates that seem to be the perfect candidates. So being able to position yourself, to put a label onto you, to know, hey, this is the box I want you to put me into, is super, super important now. Okay. So here are the recommendations, especially for those who know that you are probably between medium and difficult job search complexity, but it also applies to standard. Evidence is credibility. Whatever you can prove, this is what will be accepted as more credible. Because as I already mentioned in the introduction to the slide, part of the interview happens on the screen. Now, the average number of CVs somebody receives will not be 50 anymore. It can easily be 100 or more. So what kind of evidence are we looking for? And this is now for everybody. If you can and have the time, switch from Netflix to Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, massive online open courses. Harvard offers them, MIT offers them, so you can actually get and do courses from prestigious universities. You can go into Coursera.org and look for courses and certificates that are relevant in 2020. What else can you do? And this is something I recommend every one of you does, which is also, among others, a fantastic interview preparation tool. Sit down and make a list of all your projects and successes year by year, looking at the last 7 years. And expressing your projects and successes tangibly. I do understand there are roles where you can't really put numbers onto what it is that you've done, but you can definitely add context and context, numbers, consequences, or name the type of tools you have worked with. So let's say for somebody in HR 2019, instead of saying supported recruitment processes, you can say supported digital recruitment processes for 200 roles, starting from receptionists to board members. And it's the same thing, but one sounds completely different than the other. So look at 2020, ask yourself, what have you done this year? What did you do last year, 2019? What was it, 2018? If you can challenge yourself further and say, what are the 3 biggest projects and or successes for any given year? If, again, your type of position you can't really put successes on it, think of it in terms of tools or part of what were you. I have here a question. If I see a job ad with one technical skill needed, can I add it to the CV provided I will be learning it by the time I have the interview? For example, Excel, Power BI. Andrea, I'd say the world belongs to the brave. Give it a try. If you know that you're invited and it is something that is reasonable to be learned within a week, the world belongs to the brave. If you can then actually demonstrate it, give it a try. I like your approach. You'll be fine. Okay, now how do you drill it down further? Unique selling proposition. And this is super important for everybody to understand, especially if you are an experienced manager or executive. There are something called long list arguments and short list arguments. From a recruiter's perspective, long list argument means why should this candidate be invited to be part of a recruitment process? In other words, what are the minimum requirements for the recruiter to even consider the candidate? Now, the unique selling proposition is about going one step further, which we call the shortlist arguments. In other words, why should you, the candidate, be among the top 3 candidates or even be hired? Shortlist means, so once a recruiter has a list of 50, usually, let's say 30 to 70 something candidates that fulfill the minimum requirements, they then start the screening process. They start calling them, interviews, longer, shorter, first, second, third round, so that at the end of the process, we have the top 3 candidates. Now, when preparing your job search strategy, don't only think about what box to put you into, but why should somebody actually select me out of all the co-competitors? Here an example. The interviewer could ask a finance director, why should our company hire you? And the answer could be, well, because I'm reliable, I'm a good manager, and I'm loyal. Question to you, what do you think about that answer? And I might add, this is how approximately 10 to 15% of senior executives would reply. And this is definitely something that the majority of junior specialists would reply. And I already have the first impressions. It's too simple, too general, not very concrete. Exactly. So it is actually the worst possible yet fairly common answer. Especially if you already have at least those 5, 6, 7 years of experience and you can operate with tangibles, Don't use adjectives. You're not a student anymore. Let's look at the second answer. So again, we ask the finance director candidate, why should we hire you? And the candidate says, because I have more than 10 years of experience in finance, I'm a good manager, and I have experience working in international corporations. Question over to those attending. Yes or no, do we like it? Don't we like it? Why? I see lack of sharpness, plenty of candidates with this profile, still nothing special. Okay, I agree. It is actually the most standard answer given by the most candidates, and by most, I'd say easily about 80% would give that answer. And remember, I just explained the difference between long list and short list. This is a long list type of answer. This only says, duh, if you didn't have those 10 years of experience in finance, and if I didn't see on your CV you're potentially a good manager, and without having worked in international corporations, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So this is, again, I'd say 70-80% of candidates would answer like this, but it's not the short list answer. So the best answer would be, so why should we hire you? Candidate says, because I have co-authored and delivered 2 restructuring projects in the last 3 years. In every role in the last 7 years, I've been able to identify savings of up to €500,000, and I've been able to reduce unwanted rotation in the finance department from 23 to 0% within 6 months of taking over. And now I don't have to ask you, it would be a rhetorical question. This is obviously the best possible answer, which probably only about 5% of candidates give. This is good news and bad news. Well, actually only good news for the majority of you. It is easy to positively stand out in interviews, that's one. But this answer is the answer that you also give at the beginning of your CV. This is your unique selling proposition. And I do understand not everybody is a CFO here, so let's try the same example with a marketing professional. So the interviewer asks that candidate, and by marketing professional, doesn't have to be a manager. Let's look at a specialist role. Interviewer to candidate, why should our company hire you as a marketing professional? Because I have 7 years of experience in marketing, I have managed a small team of 2 people, I know digital marketing. Question to you, how do we like this answer? Okay, the chat is silent so far. Okay, too general, nothing special. Would that be a long list answer, short list answer, or the worst? We don't have adjectives. Exactly, this is the long list answer. Thank you so much. The worst would be the following. Because please hire me because I'm enthusiastic, creative, I can work under stress. This would be the worst answer. And the best would be because, and again, if you are not a manager, you can say what you have worked on or co-created. So here the answer, a good answer would be because I have worked on the digital market strategy, which has increased sales volume by 30%. I have been part of the team that developed our social media presence on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I have personally managed our Insta account and have obtained our first 30,000 followers, for example. This would then be the best possible answer. So you don't need to be a high-flying manager to come up with concrete, tangible answers. So I can't stress that enough. If you have the time, or not even if you have the time, take the time and go through 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, Not only look at what have I personally been able to deliver, but what was I part of? What have I been exposed to? Do I know how to set up a social media presence? Can I potentially do it again? Etc., etc. Okay. So how do you arrive at your own unique selling proposition? I've already given you a couple of ideas, but here are some more. Make a list of your projects, successes, types of clients. Again, especially for those who have been in one organization for a long time, you might not really have a market comparison or context. So it might very well be that there are things that for you are so obvious to say. If you say B2B clients, it's obvious for you that it's the Fortune 500, the Fortune 50 companies, because that's what your company does. That is an assumption. That doesn't mean that the rest of the world knows that. So translate everything into more detail and more tangibility. So add the types of clients: small companies, big companies, international corporations. Maybe you realize that out of 80 clients, it's actually 60% German-speaking clients. Look at the types of tools you have, tools, methodologies, your language skills, the countries where you have worked or your team is based. Maybe you have been doing remote management. Maybe it's the number of countries you are managing, so geographies. Maybe it's the scope. Maybe what's unique is that you're either very specialized or very broad, or you combine something super technical with something business related. Look at the types of qualifications, your volunteering experience, etc., etc. So really, I actually recommend, and this is what we do with actually when starting to work with anybody, we challenge every single sentence in the CV. To give an example, a couple of days ago, I worked with somebody who is an apple but needs to look like an orange, and will go from a perceived CEO to a most probably head of marketing role. And any kind of shortcuts in the CV, so for example, say has managed or has attracted over 200 clients. What types of clients? Make a list of those clients. Oh, but there were so many. That's what I want to know. What clients? Because your client relationships might be interesting for your potential employer. Maybe you have an account that the company has been trying to get into for a long time. So challenge every sentence in your CV, and actually prepare a CV that is when in this preparation stage can even be 5 pages long, and add the details and add the numbers. And only once you have those 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, then you go back and say, what is relevant for my target group? What is attractive for my target group? And maybe there are some patterns. Maybe there are patterns in how you approach problem solving, how you work with your clients. Maybe you'll realize that there's something that you do differently from your other marketing, HR, finance, etc. colleagues. What else can you do if you still have the feeling that you're not yet unique? And here I have a question. Can you disclose client suppliers' names in the CV? I would say usually yes, unless you have a non-disclosure agreement signed with them. However, the majority does it. If you don't feel comfortable, also because of the type of industry you're in, for example, lawyers, then you can apply what lawyers do. Instead of saying that you've worked, I don't know, with Coca-Cola, you could say worked with leader in FMCG drink category, for example, or soft drink category. So there are always ways even to then describe them. Okay, going back, how do you arrive at your unique selling proposition? You can research your competition. Actually take the time to go through LinkedIn and say, who is it that I'm competing against? Right now, if you were to go onto LinkedIn and say you are I can actually do that now live. Let's say if you pretend that you are actually a recruiter, and I need somebody to play that game with, who would like to volunteer and say what kind of role it is that you might be looking for in the future. Let's do that live. Anybody? Okay, HR business partner. So I'm now logging onto LinkedIn on my phone. Just not to this. Which country? Okay. Right now, location. Let's go for Poland. There are over 1,000 HR business partners in Poland. If I actually look for HR business partner, not HRBP, I'll have over 10,000 candidates on LinkedIn. So then I'd say, okay, maybe not Poland, maybe I'll drill it down to a city, especially now that people can't move. Sometimes companies still insist on a last round in-person interview. So traveling is out of the question very often. So, and then HR business partner, there are some HR managers that are HR business partners. So really pretend to be the recruiter and see what they see when they go through preparing the long list, and compare yourself to those co-competitors and say, okay, what do they have that I don't have? What makes them special, unique, etc. So you can look at their professional qualifications, education, publications, what they have, and compare yourself to them. Talk to somebody who knows you professionally. Reach out to current colleagues, former colleagues, mentors, direct bosses. And if you can, and if you have cultivated relationships, talk to recruiters, the ones who know you, and say, listen, you speak to HR managers all the time, HR business partners, finance, What do you see in my profile that might help me position myself in a more unique way? And again, as we've discussed, where do you show your unique selling proposition? You show them on your profile summary, on the CV, and on LinkedIn, because that is the first thing people see when they open your email and the attachments, or when they search you for you on LinkedIn. You will use that also in a different manner when writing your cover emails, when contacting headhunters, decision makers, your network. And you will definitely use that during the interviews, especially at the beginning, when the first question is, hi, why did you get in touch with me? Can you please tell me about yourself? And this is then when you show your unique selling proposition. And all these things we'll discuss in the next modules. Okay, I have some final comments. I can see we do have much more time for Q&A than I had anticipated. If you see that you need to kind of reposition yourself, upskill and reskill immediately. As one of the participants said today, what if I can start immediately? Do it immediately, don't wait. Although phrased a bit clumsily, but I can't stress that enough, learn the computer and all its tools, which is super important for online interviews. What does that mean? Familiarize yourself with Zoom, Skype, and Google Hangout. Now again, from a recruiter's perspective, imagine a recruiter speaks to 10 candidates that pretty much seem to have all the same competencies. Now, let's even assume that that the person who in theory would have the best competencies for the job, but when they come online, they use the Skype account of their kids. One of my clients used a Skype account of his daughter, something like Crazy Austrian Abroad. In the background, I see an open wardrobe. And this is the thing, and this is why preparing for online interviews is so important, especially and including from a technical perspective. Now, if this recruiter has 10 candidates and they seem to have all the same competencies on at least on paper or through the first screening calls, and in theory, the best candidate uses the Skype account Crazy Austrian Abroad because they don't know how to set up their own account, and they, for example, can't connect their microphone so the recruiter hears an echo. What are the chances the recruiter will actually be able to focus on the content? I spoke to one of the executive search consultants a couple of days ago, was actually a couple of days ago, and that executive search consultant had 2 shortlisted candidates, brilliant executives that had done incredibly in person. That's why they were at the last interview round. And one of them didn't really know how to set up the tablet and how to use video. So basically, the executive search consultant and the decision maker had to interview the person like this because the video was upside down. And these are things, when those are little signals here and there that show whether candidates are up to speed with online tools. It might seem something so small, but if you compete against people who know that and who have installed Zoom, Skype, Google Hangout, who've done Click Meeting, and they've tested their IT and they have good headphones, etc., 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 those candidates will be perceived as more competent and more professional than somebody who has not familiarized themselves with this. Okay, again, don't wait and don't delay. If you can, start right away. Swap Netflix for Coursera, LinkedIn Learning. If you do not have a LinkedIn Premium account, get one for free for a month. They have absolutely brilliant videos. I can highly recommend them. And make sure, especially with LinkedIn, and there are more and more platforms actually that allow to show the certificates and also on your profile. So take advantage of that. And remember, evidence is credibility. In other words, it doesn't matter if you actually have a certain competence or skill. It's much more important if you're able to prove it on paper already. Now, before we start the Q&A, and even if we now have a full hour for Q&A, that's fine. I just want to share a couple of points here. If you can think of friends, family members, colleagues, former colleagues, please do spread the word. We will be running in total 16 open webinars for anybody to join, either directly on Click Meeting through the platform to be able to chat, or also with live streaming. If you want to keep up with what's going on, we're currently almost online with daily updates on our LinkedIn company profile. You can find also content uploaded every 2 to 3 days on our blog. I will make sure that everyone receives the career guide that I mentioned, career and job search guide for coronavirus times. You can have a look at our free material sections. You can find tips on how to find email addresses of decision makers, etc., etc. So if you want to get a head start and not wait in total 4 full weeks to get through the course, you can actually start reading ahead. And if you think this was valuable, you can use the donate link, the PayPal donate link on our website under open webinars. And now over to you. What kind of questions do you have? What would you like to know? And if you're watching live, feel free to ask your questions in the comment section. I'm here to answer any and all of your questions. Okay, first question. Is it appropriate to approach one of your clients asking for openings on their site? Just to make sure, I'll try to interpret the question. So you are a service provider or you sell products and you could see yourself working for one of your clients, correct? If it's appropriate, if you do it elegantly, why not? Of course, it depends what kind of relationship you have, how likely it is for them to keep it confidential. So appropriate, yes, done the right way, I would say. Any other questions you might have? On other, okay. We have 3-4 people typing, very good, which means we'll have more questions. Okay. I'll go one by one. How do you find my next boss? That is one of the questions. Do you want to give me some context or shall I answer it in general? I'll start with general. Okay. So step number 1, you make a list of companies that you would like to work for. In other words, you go back to step 1 that we discussed today. And once you have a goal, you translate that goal into companies. In other words, what kind of companies would find your profile attractive? What kind of companies could benefit from hiring you? So once you know your unique selling proposition, you can then relatively easily say, okay, with this profile, for example, if somebody is fluent in German and has cost optimization experience and is outside of Germany, with that, you could then say, okay, my target group are companies, German, Austrian, Swiss, or German-speaking companies outside of the DACH region that want to optimize costs. And this is something you do really well in your field or for the whole company. Then you continue. So once you have the list of companies, which usually is between 60 and 90 companies, currently I would say minimum would be 75 to probably 120. You ask yourself, who is the person most likely to make the decision to hire me? So who would you be reporting to? That can be the direct reports, could be for somebody the CEO, CFO, operations manager, etc., etc. If you're not really sure, check out the website. What is the hierarchy? Check out LinkedIn and see what is their company structure, who is likely to be reporting to somebody. So in other words, you are kind of playing private detective, at least online detective. And once you know who your potential boss is, and sometimes it is an educated guess, you then continue and say, and then the next step would be identifying the email address. How do you do that? You need to know the email structure for the company, and you need the name of your potential boss. Combining these two pieces of information, you have high chances of being able to email the right person. I hope that answers your question. Okay, next question. What kind of job paths will be available for trainers? Anna, I would still say trainers can still be trainers, but they need to learn online tools and be able to, well, work online with groups and be able to manage or prepare e-learning paths, etc. So here, if a trainer has been more an offline trainer, I'd recommend, especially on Udemy and LinkedIn Learning, their courses, how do I set up content to be delivered online, etc., etc. But I do think trainers are still necessary, especially if a lot of companies now do onboarding online. They don't have a choice, but for that they need trainers, etc. So this could be still something very, I'd stick to that. How about near future unique skills, where your projections is coming from? Well, we look at trends on job ads and what companies hire for. We have, in the last 2 weeks, reached out as a team to almost 300 board members personally to say, listen, what's going on, hiring, firing, etc. And so the projections are our own research plus what we see on the job ads. And future unique skills, well, anything that is related, especially now to 2020. When you look at, I think it was Deloitte HR, they've done some studies, and the half-life of a learned skill is currently 5.5 years. So whatever you learn today will be expired, the know-how will be expired within 5.5 years anyway. So anything that is, again, data, technical, digital, analytics, all these things. Having said that, if you are on the technical side, what will be important is the soft side and emotional intelligence, communication, leading. I mean, that's definitely something, because even if home office is a temporary solution, some companies will adapt it completely or to a certain extent as a permanent solution. So leading remote teams, building a culture. I mean, building a culture for remote teams, performance management with remote teams, these kind of things. I hope that answers your question, Richard. You said it's better to start searching in your current job. What about the jobs that currently disappear? Events, trainings, tourism? That's a very good question. And here we need to look at, and this will be medium to difficult complexity, because in other words, what Veronica here is asking, what if I'm an Apple and there are no more Apple jobs, right? So how do I identify what I can move to, correct? Is that what you're saying and asking, Veronica? So here again, make a list of everything that you have been doing and look at what of these skills and qualifications can be transferred to another industry. I do believe, I mean, there are online events and online solutions. So again, I'd focus on the digital aspect of conferences, trainings, etc. For anybody in the tourism industry, very often this is customer support, customer service. So even if it's not attractive right away to say, okay, but I don't really feel like working for shared service centers in customer service over the phone. Well, not all of the jobs in shared service centers are dull customer calls, etc. So even if it is only a temporary solution, it is definitely better to even have a temporary 3-month for half a year job, because fast forward 6 to 9 months, candidates who have a job, even if it is a temporary job, will be more valuable than candidates who don't have a job. And it's always been that way. Not right now in the next 2 months, because we're all in this together, and everybody understands that there are layoffs that have nothing to do with the candidates and have everything to do with cost management and actually surviving. But they will look at candidates in 6-9 months. What have they been doing? How have they proactively managed their break? So if it's temporarily going into a shared service center, fantastic. So I'd really, with the disappearing jobs, I'd say, okay, what can be transferred? How can the skills be used somewhere else? If there are more specific types of jobs or positions in mind, Veronica, tell me, and we can see how we would transfer somebody from one industry to another. Okay, is it appropriate for candidates to insist on an interview with future direct N plus before accepting job offer in case recruitment process didn't imply interview with direct N plus one? Okay, that's a good question. So is it appropriate to insist? So in other words, if you are, let's say, an HR manager and you don't want to talk with your HR director, but with the HR director responsible for the region, would that be the hierarchy? Is that how I understand it? Is it appropriate for a candidate to insist on having an interview with your boss's boss? I'm not sure about insisting. Especially now, I would ask if it was possible. And I'd make sure to share the arguments behind it. And if you can do it elegantly and reasonably, why not? I'm not sure about the word insisting, because again, with all things being equal, and if companies can really cherry pick candidates, and then there's one who says, I will not sign a contract unless I speak to the boss, I want to speak to the manager, that might raise a red flag. I hope that answers your question, Anna. Another question, how do you manage salary expectation questions without underpricing or overpricing? That's a good one. I mean, we will talk about salary negotiations, etc. in the 4th module, but I'll answer it especially because of today's context. A lot of companies have gone and said, especially in countries where there is no government support or very little, or where there's no option of what is called Kurzarbeit in the German-speaking countries. Companies are trying to survive on their own, suggesting their employees to take a cut of salary cut of usually 10, 20, 25% for the company to survive financially for the next couple of months. So I do believe that there will be not only a temporary correction of salaries, but that might be something more permanent across several industries. So managing salary expectation questions can be very tricky currently. And here my recommendation, especially if you do not have financial stability or don't really have the luxury to say, well, if they don't pay me 10,000 euro a month, I will not get out of my bed. So if you say, I'd even start at 2,000, it doesn't matter. I need a job, I need the stability. So even, especially if you're in that situation, I would do everything I can to have the employer declare their budget. So if you receive that question, you can say, listen, you know yourself what's going on the market. I'm very interested in that position. I know that what I used to earn might not be what I will earn, which is absolutely fine. I understand that. So I'm open to hear your offer, receive your offer. Or to say, if it's a very early stage interview, to actually say, listen, I think I don't have all the details to be able to say or declare my salary expectations. If you could send me a more detailed brief, give me 1 or 2 days, and I'll then tell you how much I would like to earn. And you can then use those 1 to 2 days to research, reach out to your network, look at salary.com, etc., and do the research and say, okay, this is probably here. Or maybe you find somebody, again, a friendly recruiter who can help you find out the budget, etc., etc. Also, if that question comes up with a recruiter currently, be open and say, listen, this is coronavirus times, stability is more important than this and that. Would you be able to actually suggest how much your client is willing to pay? So this is how I would deal salary expectation questions currently. Okay, one more question. Finding a job on the same level, but in a bigger country, not speaking fluently the language of the country, moved recently there, and after maternity leave sounds very difficult. Are there any recommendations? Okay, so you want to find so somebody moved to a new country during their maternity leave, and now in the new country where they don't speak the language fluently, they want to find a job at the same level. If those countries are German or French speaking, do everything you can to improve your language skills. Recommendations, I would look for companies that perceive you as a business added value. In other words, let's say you are from, okay, let's assume you're from Latin America, from a Spanish-speaking Latin American country. And for some reason, okay, Moldova, good. Doesn't really matter. So what you would do is then Moldova, what are your language skills? So, but the general idea here is to look at your language skills and say, okay, I speak English, Romanian, Russian. I speak English, Spanish, and something. Who could use my language skills? So either one idea could be look for companies who have regional headquarters there. So they might need somebody at your level with the language skills to cover your linguistical area or cultural area, this is one attempt. This is one approach. The other approach would be to say, what kind of companies from Romania, Russia, Moldova are in the country you're currently living in, and contact them directly. Here, your advantage is they don't need to send you anywhere because you're already there. So you could say, listen, I've been doing my research. You're one of 10 Moldovan companies in wherever you are. Maybe you need somebody with my profile who understands the Moldovan culture, but is already on site, intensively learning the language, Because for them, the language fluency will be less important than for the local companies. I hope that makes sense. Okay, next question. That was a thumbs up, good. An executive at my current company is leaving for another company. I'm trying to apply since a while. Is it appropriate to send an email asking to keep me in the list of possible candidates in the new team that needs to expand? Definitely do that. This is networking 101. If you have a way in, and under obviously the assumption that you have a good relationship with that executive, ask. The world belongs to the brave. So yes, why not ask? Definitely do that. Looking at the live stream, do we have any questions from the live stream? No questions from the live stream. Okay, this went much quicker than expected. Could you please repeat how we can reach the recorded session? Thank you for asking diplomatically, because I have never said that before. We will make the recorded session available on our YouTube channel that we're launching, and we'll email that to you as well. So also to those who had registered but weren't able to join live. So we'll make it available, and we will be sending you the links. So in summary, next week, in the next 3-4 weeks, we'll have 3 more modules. For anybody who is currently looking for a job or is getting ready for the job search, those 4 modules will definitely give you practical tools to be able to maneuver the next couple of weeks. Do take the time to define your unique selling proposition, because you will need that for the second module, not second step, but third step in the job search process, but second module, which is preparing your 2 CVs and LinkedIn profile. What we will do next week is the following. We will look at the difference between the CV for applicant tracking systems and how you can prepare that with a step-by-step guide. I will walk you through that. We will look at different CV formats and why they work or why they don't work, which is sometimes more important. So you know what kind of templates to exclude. And we will have a look at the LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn profile from a job search perspective, what you need to do to increase the chances for the LinkedIn algorithm to position you as a top candidate, especially if there are like hundreds of applicants, and what to do to increase the likelihood for a recruiter, if they look for, let's say, HRBP in Poland, to increase the likelihood for you not to be on search result page 20, but on 17. And I can guarantee that next time we will use the full 2 hours looking at how much material we will have to cover. So definitely reserve the full 2 hours for next week. We will send you links to prepare, so you don't have to ask basic questions. I want to make sure that you already have the basics ready for next time. So we'll send you, let's call it kind of homework for next time, so we can dig right deep into how to prepare those three things. If you have questions up front, please feel free to email them to me. Or if there's something also after today that wasn't clear, I do understand this is a live setting and not everybody feels comfortable asking questions in public. So if you have private questions, please email them to me. I am now sharing my email address here, bichl.sandra@careerangels.eu. in the subject, so I know this is from today, at open webinar EN. And with that, please do give me usually 1 to 2 days to reply. We are currently receiving about 100 emails. I'm personally receiving 100 emails per day approximately, so I'll do my best to respond to you within 1 or 2 days. Thank you so much for coming and joining today, and I hope to see you and many more next Tuesday. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.